radio systems in there, two-way radio systems, and it's all being powered by a little battery. So I have a lot of fleet accounts that are having major battery failures. Well, they now make an AGM battery that's a drop fit in there. It's by Optima. Optima and XI make an AGM drop-in, dual-purpose AGM battery that fits there. So that's mainly what we traditionally were getting closest to in terms of hybrids. I myself went to a hybrid class about 3 years ago at a battery convention in San Antonio when, I think about 4 years ago, when hybrids were barely hitting aftermarket and we're starting to have issues with replacement packs. That's when we started getting our feet wet. And now, here we are, 3 years later, there's a lot more applications with lithium. And definitely everyone thinks about the Prius, the first real successful hybrid on the road. And actually everyone's really familiar with, became very familiar when it hit the news with the Boeing, the Dreamliner.
Right.
And the lithium ion
Yeah.
that caught on fire, right?
Grounded it for so many years.
Exactly. So every one of us, probably every one of you, has one of those flammable batteries on you right now. On your cell phones. Exactly. So everyone's scratching their head. Why did they put lithium ion in an airplane? Now there's lithium iron phosphate. We'll talk about today. So this is actually from a manufacturer, K2, here in Las Vegas. I was actually at the facility, and I'll discuss a little more about them later on. But lithium iron phosphate, by the way, for this class too, I put a new section in just dealing with what we're dealing with today. Nickel metal, the nickel metal hybrid, which is your first generation Prius. Now the newer ones are now going towards lithium. And then you have, so next on the market was lithium ion. We've seen the drawbacks of that. But what's really prominent on the market now is lithium iron phosphate. So getting back to the Boeing, people were asked, I was at a trade show when the Boeing incident occurred, and I'm showing them these lithium iron phosphate batteries. So everyone thinks, oh, Boeing, let's catch on fire. So no, that's lithium ion. This is lithium iron phosphate. Much more stable technology. So then everyone started asking me, well, why didn't they have that in the Dreamliner? So most people don't realize that Dreamliner was approved for construction about 10 years ago. It's taken that long to develop that plane. So to get a battery system approved by the FAA is an act of God. It doesn't happen during when your planes are grounded. If they waited to get this approved, they would lose millions. So I'm sure the next generation is going to be this. So what they had to do was, because they were stuck with that system on there, but by the way, 10 years ago, lithium ion was the newest technology in lightweight, high capacity, energy density batteries. Just there was that one minor flaw. They are very combustible. So the engineers, got together and they said, okay, we can't change the batteries out. All we can do is to minimize if there is indeed a reaction, thermal runaway, how do we prevent the fire from spreading? So that's when they made the new titanium case for the batteries. And there's no air, completely airtight. So we all know a fire needs oxygen to burn. So even if there is thermal runaway, the fire will self-extinguish. And they have a backup to that one, which is also lithium iron. So the chance of two going on in when it's up there, they got the approval of FAA for that. Talking about the next generation, since we're talking about this is all much more interesting to hear about, particularly than when you're talking about the theory in the class. So to keep your attention, I was at this manufacturer, which is called K2 Energy. You can see them on the web. And I got to do a plant tour with a customer. And it was really interesting to see what they had in there. And they had this one section of the plant where they're now making batteries for the U.S. military. Same technology that's in this, they had this really high rate system where they had these actually with a water cooling system. So we weren't allowed to take pictures, but we could observe what we were and stick our nose and ask questions. But basically, they have a high rate firing system for a gun system for the military. It has to be able to put 50 continuous draws of power, really high amperage. I can't remember how high it was, but the battery packs, each battery pack was about the size of this table, and they had about 4 of them together. So it's simply one of their high power firing systems. So I saw that as one application for the lithium iron phosphate. The other that they showed us was what they were making for the new Raptor stealth fighter. That has now been equipped with lithium iron phosphate batteries. The everything else that you see in the military uses AGM batteries, and those I've been to that plant as well. That plant is on your folder that says Odyssey. That plant is in Warrensburg, Missouri, and actually that plant is not too far from the air base where they have the stealth bombers. So a lot of the actual wives of the pilots actually work at the Odyssey plant. So Odyssey is one of the biggest suppliers for the U.S. military for batteries. Matter of fact, I'll kind of show you this right here. This battery here on the cover is an AGM battery. Actually, I brought one in here too. It's kind of moved up. This weighs over 85 pounds. Put it on your desk right here. The extreme difference in batteries. I'm going to pick this up with one hand. This is a 88-pound AGM battery. I always bring this one because it's just the beast. And this battery that's on your folder there, try one hand. It's not always at the trade shows. Thank you. At the trade shows, I put one out on the table and I tell everyone to try and lift it. And I go, no, don't worry, it's not bolted to the table. Lift it up. And they can't lift it. You need 2 hands. That battery is used in the M1 Abram tanks. It's also used in the Bradley assault vehicle. And they also make a different configuration of that battery for the Humvees. And they also now are making the batteries that go in all of the Air Force fighter planes. Another AGM application that they were approached for the U.S. military, everyone's heard of the U.S. nuclear subs. Nuclear subs have been in service now for quite some time. And believe it or not, almost all the submarines in the world are still using wet acid batteries. So when you think of wet acid batteries, like your car battery, imagine that. Imagine a room this size, all of these huge 2-volt cell batteries, and they're contained in the sub. So I've spoken to 2 individuals, one at the factory, and actually I spoke to someone who works for LADWP, retired from the U.S. Navy, who worked on the subs with the batteries. And he said, believe it or not, when one of those cells goes bad, all they can do when they're out at sea is go in and jump over the bad cell. So they have all this safety gear that they have a Navy man to put on. He then goes into the battery compartment, and there's a 90% probability that he will come out alive. So I was kind of floored to hear that you would think nuclear cells would be state of the art. Well, until maybe about 10 years ago, that's when the military approached Odyssey and said, you need to make us a battery for our subs. They literally wrote them a blank check and said, build it. So there's actually, when I was at the plant in Missouri, I actually got to see the battery. Excuse me, turn this thing off. And pretty impressive battery. It was, see this cabinet here? About the size of this cabinet, but up to this size. And maybe, yeah, about this size. Giant, one of these. That was what they had made as the battery for subs. So I said, that's great. Well, I'd love to see how they make it. And there's a section of the plant that is off limits. And you need security clearance to go in there. So cancel again that tour. So, but I then asked, I said, so why is it so secret? Why can't anyone see that?